in the dining hall, people come up and yell in my face. Some black girl in a hijab ran up to me and said, "You know what you're supporting? You're racist." This, and I'm trying to get my pizza. I'm trying to get my oatmeal or whatever at the dining hall.
Nick Fuentes, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I wanted to meet you. I've heard about you.
I've heard about you.
So, well, thank you. I want to understand what you believe, and I want to give you a chance in a minute to just lay it out, not what you're pivoting against, which are a lot of the same thing. I agree with you on some of the things you're pivoting against for sure, but what do you affirmatively believe? So I just want to stand back and let you explain it. But first, I want to understand how you got to where you are, how you became Nick Fuentes. So this is my understanding of your life arc, and tell me if I'm wrong. You show up at Boston University. You grew up in a suburb of Chicago, kind of working class, western suburb, and you show up at Boston University in the fall of 2016 at the height of the battle between Trump and Hillary. It's like this kind of pivot point in history. And you show up with a MAGA hat, and you have a Trump hat, and you have like basically off-the-shelf Republican views?
Yes.
And so describe what the views that you had then, and then describe what happened.
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I was very political. I was reading a lot of the libertarian stuff, Austrian school, Chicago school, economic type literature, because that's what was popular at the time. If you went online in the early 2010s, that's all the conservative content there really was. That was the most extremely online type
Libertarian
stuff.
economics.
Well, yeah, basically kind of the remnant of the Ron Paul revolution.
Yes.
The Young Americans for Liberty, PragerU, which kind of skews a little more, I guess, conservative, but very basic small government, individualism, libertarian type stuff.
So you watch PragerU videos?
Oh, yeah. I was in the Prager Force.
What's that?
It's a Facebook group for college kids, and they promote the PragerU videos.
Wow.
To the college students and high school students.
So you really were a product of the moment.
Absolutely.
And how'd you feel about Trump?
Well, initially, I didn't like Trump. When the primary started in 2015, I considered him to be a statist.
Yeah.
Which sounds so ridiculous now.
No, a lot of people thought that.
Yeah. And I was a libertarian, so I saw him as a big government, 1990s liberal. When he was asked about healthcare, he said, well, we'll take care of everybody. And I said, I'm a Rand Paul guy, Ted Cruz guy. Those were kind of my people back in 2015.
You like Ted Cruz?
I was a cruise missile.
Does Cruz know this?
I don't think so, no. I was actually on his campaign.
You were on the Ted Cruz campaign?
I don't know if I was on the campaign, but I door knocked in a little village in Chicago, in McKinley Park, for Ted Cruz.
No way.
In the Illinois primary.
Did he write you a thank you note?
No, I didn't get a thank you. He lost, so I guess.
Yeah, he did. He did in a very humiliating way. Wow, that's amazing. So what happened?
So I, like everybody else in 2016, went through this ideological awakening. And first I shifted to Trump. And the first realization that I had is it started in 2016, actually, because the primaries, started in 15, around April or May, I think was the first announcements. And I had very negative feelings about Trump. And like I said, pro Rand Paul, pro Cruz. But when the actual Iowa caucus happened and the primaries began, I saw that Trump was dominating. And every night in the Super Tuesday, when they had all the big contests, one after the other, I remember the media was furious that he was winning one after the other. And I remember thinking to myself, like, structurally, if I'm a libertarian or a conservative and we want to change the country, we have to win elections. If you want to win elections, you have to bypass the media. I sort of had this realization that the media was really standing in the way. They were the problem. And I had this realization that all the conservatives and Republicans up to that point were afraid to take on the media. They, like Mitt Romney, would cower before them and were so apologetic and so weak. And so initially I said, I actually don't ideologically agree with Trump at all, but he will destroy the liberal media, or at least their monopoly on thought and opinion.
Yes.
And then a breakthrough can occur. So that was kind of the first hump. And I said, I could get behind Trump because he's a winner. He'll win for our side. And that was kind of the first big thing. And then as I listened to him more and more, his speeches and his rhetoric, I started to think about immigration.
Which you hadn't really considered before?
Never. And the reason why is because I was from a 95% white suburb. So the diversity had not really reached my corner of Chicago yet. Me and my family, not so much my family, they grew up in the city, but growing up in the suburbs, I was insulated from that. So it was just not even, it's actually, you're going to love this. I don't know if I've ever even said this on an interview before. I was listening to Mark Levin's show. This goes to show how normie I was.
Actually?
I listen to him every day.
You listen to Mark Levin every day?
In high school, yes.
Wow.
I was a fan. I loved his show. And I actually liked how he was kind of obnoxious and mean to his callers.
Yeah.
Vicious. And I liked that. I thought that was funny. But I'll never forget one show. He goes live and he says, America's becoming a majority non-white country. Does anybody think that's a good idea? And I was thinking to myself, yeah, that actually doesn't sound so good. I didn't really even think that America's becoming majority minority like that.
Wait, so you were radicalized on race by Mark Levin?
Yes.
Are you making that up? That's
a real story.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. He planted the seed at least. And then I saw a graphic on 4chan or Twitter, and I'm sure you've seen something similar. It said, this is what the map looks like, the electoral map. If only men vote, if only women vote, if only whites vote, if only non-whites vote. And it became very obvious what the electoral problem is. It's demographics. These immigrants are coming here. They're going to turn Texas blue like they turned California blue.
Yeah, I saw it happen.
Yeah, and you look at even the opinion polls. These people don't believe in free speech. They don't believe in the Constitution, the Second Amendment. As a libertarian, the things that are, and as American, things that are important to you, they don't believe, they don't understand these things. And so I said, that's another political obstacle. You've got the media, you've got immigration. So I'm thinking like, well, we're going to vote for Ted Cruz. He's going to be the constitutionalist. We'll vote for Rand Paul. He'll be the libertarian. But what stands in the way of political power for us? It's the media and it's immigration. So I said, well, we got to get Trump to beat the media, build the wall, deport the illegals. And once we set the country straight, then we can actually have our constitutional republic back. That was kind of the idea. And that's the mindset that I had going into college.
Amazing. So then what happened?
So I go to college and I'm just, at that point, a huge Trump supporter. And you got to understand, for me, for my generation, so I was 18. I turned 18 in August 2016. And to us,
That's
Trump...
amazing.
Yeah. Well, because we're like the first generation that was influenced by Trump coming of age in that moment.
No, I say it's amazing because when you're living in something, you don't appreciate its full significance. But to be 18 in August of 2016, so this really is, as you're forming your views and really yourself.
Yes, it's transformative. And, so for us, he was like the savior of Western civilization. We looked at him as like and by we, I mean me and all the online kids, teenagers that supported him. We really believed the hype, like Teflon Don, like he could go into any scenario and win. Like he was unstoppable, unflappable. Nobody could score points on him. He just seemed like, they said you can't stump the Trump. Like he could not be stumped. And so he just had this aura of inevitability, invincibility. And I loved that. And so I went to Boston University. I got on campus in September and I was wearing my MAGA hat everywhere, in the dining hall, walking down the street. And it's a city campus. So you're walking down Commonwealth Avenue and, you're in the city of Boston, which is super liberal. And at that time, it's different than it was now. People were getting fired for wearing MAGA hats. People were getting punched in the face. It was like being a Trump supporter was out there actually back then. It was controversial. It was controversial everywhere, not even, just in liberal Boston. But so I was wearing my hat everywhere and I was just getting accosted constantly. in the dining hall, people come up and yell in my face. Some black girl in a hijab ran up to me and said, you know what you're supporting? You're racist, this. And I'm trying to get my pizza, I'm trying to get my oatmeal or whatever at the dining hall. This was happening constantly. And so I was going then on Twitter, and I had a small Twitter account with my real name and face, and I had, maybe 200 followers. And I'm posting about my experiences. And I caught the attention of a lot of people on campus for wearing the hat, for posting on Twitter, and they found my Twitter.
You've only been there like a month?
Less weeks, maybe 3 weeks. This is starting to kick up. And I catch the attention of my peers, and they start going at me on Twitter and giving me death threats. We're going to kill you. How dare you? If I see you, I'm going to beat your ass, that kind of thing. And this is my first experience with this. Now we're all kind of desensitized to it, but that was my first run-in with this intensity from the left. So I file a police report. I get real nervous. And, when you're a student, you can't really avoid other people. You're in a dorm room. Exactly. You're in the, so you're vulnerable. And anyway, long story short, so one of these guys from the campus libertarian group, Young Americans for Liberty, he reaches out to me and says, hey, I'm not going to say his name, but he goes, I go to a school in Boston. I'm from YAL. He said, and I'd like to set up a debate with you and one of these people that's been giving you a hard time on campus because they were doing a lot of events. He said, is that something you're interested in? I said, absolutely. And so he goes around and he asks some of the bigger people that are antagonizing me on Twitter, and everybody says no. And he goes, yeah, no one's going for it. I said, well, can you try again? Can you? And so he finds one guy, and it turns out to be the student body president of the whole university.
Could be you.
Yeah, the senior, this liberal douchebag progressive. And he's the student body president of the student government there. And so we set up the debate. It was about a week before the actual election. So I think it was end of October, beginning of November. And they hold it in this auditorium in the center of the campus, and like 300 people show up. So it turns into like this huge, and they're all liberal. They all hate my guts. They're heckling me the whole time. They're yelling at me. We do this debate about Trump versus Hillary. And so I'm there and I'm pro-Trump, and I say, I think Trump's going to win. And I'm straight up like ripping the Ben Shapiro talking points. I'm saying, it's got everything to do with culture and nothing to do with race, and diversity's a problem and all this. And I decisively win the debate. It's like not even close. The debate wraps up, and this girl who I think I had talked to her on Twitter once or twice comes running up to the stage after the debate, and it's Cassey Dillon. And at this time, she's a fellow at Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's company. And like I said, I barely knew her. And she comes running up and she says, oh my gosh, I live streamed this debate on Periscope on Twitter. She said, and 30,000 people watched it, and you have like 5 job offers. You did incredible. I said, wow, I don't know what to say. That's great. She goes,
you're 18 years old.
Yes. So it's like happening very quickly for me, And she goes, do you want to do a post-game interview after the debate? I said, sure. And so she asked me about how I thought the debate went and what my views are and things like that. And, very normal stuff. And then at the end, she says, I just got back from doing study abroad in Israel. She goes, and it was amazing. Would you ever take a trip to Israel? And I said, no, I think I got everything I need right here in America. And she goes, oh, okay. And she wraps up the interview. And that was a little bit of foreshadowing. And this begins a relationship, not a romantic relationship, but we become friends and we start talking. And she's plugged in, like I said, at Daily Wire. She's talking to people at Right Side Broadcasting Network, the college Republicans. I start to develop this friendship with her. And over time, she lands me this show on Right Side Broadcasting Network. And in this time, I'm really starting to lean into America first. I'm becoming more pro-Trump as time goes on. And what really stood out to me was Trump's inaugural address in January 17th. So this was just a couple months later. And in Trump's inaugural, he says famously, a new vision will govern our land. It's going to be only America first, America first. And I said, that's me. Like, that's what I believe. Yeah. I'm an American nationalist.
Me too.
Fully at this point, not even a conservative. And there was one thing that happened just before that that really struck me as strange. And I've told this story before. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but suffice to say, Barack Obama in the lame duck period, so the Democrats lost the election, he's on his way out. There's a resolution in the Security Council condemning the settlements in the West Bank in Israel. And typically, the U.S. delegation will veto those resolutions condemning Israel. Well, Obama's on his way out. He's got nothing to lose. So the U.S. delegation abstains from the resolution, and it passes. And Fox News and all the pro-Israel conservatives are calling him an anti-Semite. They're saying he hates Jews. He's an anti-Semite. He hates Israel. And I saw that, and it struck me as strange because it seemed hypocritical. It seemed like how when conservatives would critique anything about race, we got called racist, or anything about feminism, we got called sexist. All Obama did was uphold U.S. policy on the West Bank that we've had since '67, which is we don't support the settlements. I said, how is it anti-Semitic to just be consistent on our U.S. foreign policy? Like I said, which is a Republican-Democrat consensus. And I got attacked for this. I wrote a big article about this. I tweeted about it. I tweeted to Ben Shapiro. I said, I've never seen anything on the Daily Wire that's actually critical of Israel. And he quote tweets me. And at this time, I have 1,000 followers on Twitter.
How old are you?
I'm 18. I'm a freshman.
Still a freshman in college, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this is even before I started my show. And I don't know, I probably got 100 likes on this tweet. It wasn't a viral tweet. He quote tweets me and says, to accuse a Jew of dual loyalty is the surest sign of anti-Semitism. And this is how it sort of begins. And I see this tweet. And by the way, that was on Christmas Eve in 2016.
He immediately called you an anti-Semite.
Mm-hmm. So I'm driving to Christmas Eve Mass with my family. And I see on Twitter, the notification comes up, Ben Shapiro quote tweets me, calling me an anti-Semite. And I was like, what is this? Why is this guy attacking me? Because I don't have a platform at this time. I'm not an influential guy or anything. And so then I put out another tweet, similar. I said something like, if you're China first, you should live in China. If you're Mexico first, you should live in Mexico. If you're Israel first, maybe you should go live in Israel. And again, he quote tweets me and says, you're an anti-Semite.
That same night?
This was, I think, a couple weeks later. Happened a little bit further down the line. And so...
Were you surprised that he knew you were?
Yeah, I was. I was surprised at why he cared.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, how does he even know who I am or what I'm about? And it turned out that Cassey Dillon, she had texted him earlier and she wanted him to take me under his wing. She texted him after that debate and said, you really like this guy. He's amazing. He did this great debate. She goes, but he's a little too pro-Trump. He's a little too Trumpy. And he goes, I'll take a look. And so I guess the two of them were kind of grooming me in a sense. They wanted me to go maybe and be a Daily Wire or maybe looking me as a potential conservative activist or influencer. And so they started paying attention to me. And the more critical of Israel I was, I started to get this really intense pushback from the both of them and from a lot of the people at Daily Wire.
Why do you think, so you're an 18-year-old college freshman, you're clearly talented and you're engaged, you're really interested, and you ask not crazy questions like, what is this? Mm-hmm. And rather than explain it, they just call you a racist, call you an anti-Semite. That's the first response. That seems like the least effective, well, it turned out to be not very effective in your case, but that seems like the least effective thing you could do. Why do you think they did that?
Well, I think that you have to look at it not in retrospect because hindsight is 20/20. And so looking back, you could say they made a terrible mistake because look at sort of what they provoked or what they catalyzed. But at that time, you got to consider, I'm 18 with no following, with no network. I'm coming from the suburbs of Chicago. My parents didn't go to college. I have no connections. And so for them, it was very easy that if they detected that a promising young guy was going to become anti-Israel in the conservative movement, they could crush that person easily and grind them under the heel. So they sort of were alerted, oh, there's a precocious young guy that isn't on board with Israel. We'll keep an eye on him. And if he gets too vocal or popular, we'll cut him down, we'll crush him. Because at this time, as you know, in 2017, it's a very different time. 2016, 17, any criticism or dissent on the subject was a death sentence. You became radioactive, unhireable, blacklisted, and that's exactly what happened. And basically from then on, it was just this escalating series of blacklisting, censorship, hit pieces, rumors to try to ostracize me from the movement. And
while you're a college student?
Yes, as a freshman, yeah.
So looking back with that 2020 hindsight, I mean, Ben Shapiro seems like a big part of your political evolution.
Yes.
You went from a fan / acolyte to an opponent and then just pivoted against everything that he believes.
Yeah, it was because it was this new dialectic that Trump forced.
Yeah.
Trump planted the seed.
And the seed was America first.
Yes.
So once you accept that, a lot of the way we're doing things becomes impossible to support or justify.
Right. The contradiction becomes apparent. It gets moved to the center and it becomes unignorable if you're consistent.
So what kind of efforts did they make to make you go away?
So this is a couple of months down the line. You know, first they would try to dissuade me from asking questions because I was friends with a lot of the Daily Wire writers, not just Cassey Dillon, but many of them were Jewish. And I would ask them point blank. I would say, so why do we give Israel all this money? $3.8 billion per year? What is that for? And they would say, well, you know, there's a really good answer for that, but you're asking it in the wrong way. You're asking it in an anti-Semitic way. I'd say, I'm asking for the proof. You know, what's the argument there? And so first it was the sort of, hey man, could you kind of tone it down? Maybe just don't bring that up so much. But I was persistent because at this time I was genuinely inquisitive. I wanted to know, is there an actual reason? And I was actually expecting that there was a really good reason for all of it. And the more that I read, the more that I dug into the subject, the more I found out there's a lot of these neocon Jewish types behind the Iraq war. There's the foreign aid complex, which is really unique. There's AIPAC, which is this intense foreign lobby where it's bipartisan. It seems to be the only thing that the parties can agree on. And so it just made me burn more with curiosity. So I just kept asking them. And eventually they said, you know what? We're not going to talk to you anymore. And these are my friends. I met them, went to Christmas parties with them. And all of them one day said, you're done. We're blocking you. We're never going to speak to you again. We're never going to have you on our show. And I said, wow, like this seems like inhuman. I'm struck by how impersonal this is. Like here, I thought we're friends. We're all conservatives. Maybe we disagree on one issue. Now I'm being canceled by the right. So I was shocked by this.
When was this?
This was February or March 2017.
So you're still a freshman in college?
Yes.
Are you even paying attention to college at this point?
No, not at all. And my grades started to suffer because I was just really focused on this.
So that's pretty young to get canceled and pretty young to have friendships destroyed over politics. Like that's usually, like decades down the line.
Right.
What did you do?
Well, I just became more emboldened. And so I took this story on my show. At this time, I was on RSBN and I had this show, which I named after the inaugural. It's called America First. And I would kind of subtly bring up the Israel topic and say, this is something you're not allowed to talk about. This seems like an apparent contradiction. It's a big problem. And they escalated their attacks. Cassey Dillon would call my boss, who she was friends with, at RSBN every day for weeks, saying, you'll never believe what Nick said on his show tonight. It's so racist. It's so bad. You got to take him off the air. It's going to make you look bad. And I would then get word from my boss, Joe Seals. He was the founder at Right Side. And he would call me up and say, I don't know what has gotten into Cassey. I thought you guys were friends, but she is calling me every day hysterically, demanding that I fire you. And I was like, wow. So it just keeps getting worse. It starts with this, they're very weird about the subject. Then they don't want to talk to me. Then they're trying to get me fired. And I'm thinking, okay, so clearly what I'm asking about, there's some truth there that they don't want.
I should have asked you this earlier, did anyone during the course of, pre-cancelization say to you, here are the reasons. You're not asking the question correctly, but there are reasons that our foreign aid to Israel is so high. Like, and here's what they are.
They did, but in a very general and vague way. As you know, it's never specific. They would say things like, well, they're our partner in the Middle East. They're a democracy in the Middle East. Just as very vague. It's rhetorical. And I read The Israel Lobby by Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt, and they break it down very succinctly that there's no real strategic benefit. Actually, there's strategic liability. Eastern Mediterranean is not a strategically important region. The intelligence that Israel provides is not useful. Actually, it's detrimental because they frequently lie. The technology we give them, they pass along to the Chinese, which was a big scandal. So I would give them all this and say, yeah, that's not adding up. And they would say, yeah, well, you really just can't talk about that.
Your friend said that to you?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so what happened to your job? The Right Side Broadcasting gig?
Eventually, I got fired. I got kicked out.
Why?
Because one of these clips that Cassey Dillon had a problem with, she ran it up the flagpole. She took it to Media Matters, actually, which is a left-wing outfit. They're like a cancel mill. And
wait, the Daily Wire person took it to Media Matters?
Yes.
Are you sure?
I'm 99% sure.
Huh. What was the clip?
It was a clip, ironically, where I was talking about the travel ban, the so-called Muslim ban, and I was defending it. And I said that the First Amendment does not protect foreign nationals. It doesn't protect Salafists, Wahhabis. Right. He's like, I said, they're saying that there's a constitutional right for radical Muslims to come here. And I said that, how are they protected by the First Amendment? They're foreign nationals. And the authorial intent of the First Amendment was actually not even to protect that to begin with. It's kind of anti-Christendom radical ideology. So it's something, ironically, that probably Shapiro and Cassey would agree with, but they recognize the currency that a clip like that would have with the left, because the left could say, you're Islamophobic, you're racist.
So she brought that to the left saying, look at this guy. It's not that he's anti-Israel, but he's anti-Muslim.
Yes.
Well, that's very interesting.
Yes.
And so that clip appears on Media Matters, which at the time, I was the subject of a lot of attacks from them at the time. And people kind of listened to them.
Yeah.
Including on the right, they listened to them.
Yes.
So what happened?
So I had to write an apology. My boss called me up and said, you need to apologize for what you said.
For being anti-Muslim.
Yes. And so I didn't write, I'm sorry, but I had to write something like, well, I should have chosen my words more carefully and this, that, and the other. And ultimately, then they fired me
anyway.
A couple weeks later. Yeah.
And what was the pretext for that?
Well, they wanted to get in the White House press office. They wanted a press pass. And they said, the stuff you're saying on the show isn't like a good look for Right Side. They're not going to let us into the White House if you're with us.